Hi there and welcome to Soccer X TV. I'm here with Maggie Murphy, CEO of Lewes Football Club. Maggie, how are you doing today?
Yeah, very good. Almost ready for Christmas. So yeah, just winding down now.
Yeah, okay, so we can just jump straight into it. So tell us more about Lewes Football Club.
So Lewes is a special club. It's been around since 1885. So it's one of the oldest clubs in the country, actually. I think it's older than the likes of Liverpool, for example. But it's probably best known for a couple of things that happened in its history. The first is about 12, 13 years ago, it became fan owned. So originally it was a very normal kind of football club. It kind of owned by a couple of local business owners that had done well for themselves. But on the back of the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, they weren't able to keep it going. And so what happened was 6 fans took the club into fan ownership. And then they decided to democratize it and say that anyone could become an owner. So at the beginning, there was those 6, then 60, then 600. And today we've got 2,530 something owners.
That's
And they're
great.
now across the world. So we have owners in 41 countries at the moment, based on the last count, I believe. And I guess the reason it's picked up and the reason that it resonates with people around the world is in part due to the fact that apart from being fan owned and trying to be an ethical, transparent, accountable football club, we also took a decision in 2017 to split our revenue equally between the men's side and the women's side. And so that's catapulted the women's side up into the second tier in England. So we play alongside, Premier League brands such as Crystal Palace, for example. And so, yeah, we're now a few years into that policy. And I guess back at the time when we introduced that policy, we didn't have that many fans coming to games on the women's side, and we weren't making that much money. But fast forward, and now, the women are bringing in hundreds of thousands of pounds each year. So it's definitely been good for business as well as good for the community, good for players, good for fans. So yeah, that's the insight into Lewes FC.
That truly sounds incredible. And what would you say the key factors contributing to the success of Lewes Football Club are, both on and off the field? I know you did mention that it's like a democratic club owned by people. Like, what would you say these key factors are?
I think there's a couple. I think we're very brave. It was brave to take the club into fan ownership rather than just look for other wealthy owners. I think it was brave to take the club into its period as Equality FC by splitting the revenue. I think that bravery comes from the town of Lewes. Lewes, as a town, has a big, brave personality. It has a history of rebelling against various monarchs, and it has an annual bonfire, the largest in the UK, if not in Europe. So there's a bravery around Lewes, which I think is really important. And connected with that, it's got a personality. So I think that therefore it becomes, because we take a strong stance on various issues, it means that brands and sponsors and partners and fans resonate with the club. And so they are more committed in a way to the club because of what it stands for and because of the positions it's taken. And I think that that's probably one of the really crucial things for the future. I think that now when people are growing up, they don't necessarily support the club in their town. They start looking for clubs that align with their principles and their values. And I think that's why we resonate with people in these more than 40 countries, because we stand for something that they wish their own club on their own doorstep stood for. So I think those are probably the key principles. And we try and take those principles into the playing side of things as well. So, our players are wonderful human beings. We always do. Like, for us, character is a really important facet when we scout and recruit players. And I think that that's probably been what we're trying to create, a kind of people-centered, character-filled, personal, people-driven football club, essentially.
Amazing. I know you mentioned partners and sponsored in the previous answer, but what are further steps that Lewes Football Club is wanting to take in 2024, thanks to the support of the partners and sponsors?
Yeah, so we're very careful about our partners. We're very principled, and we only like to work with partners that are aligned with our values and our principles. We've turned down sponsorship opportunities in the past because we didn't feel like our values were aligned. And it's really important because we don't really see them as transactional. We see them as partnerships. That might sound like a cliche, but for us, it genuinely is important. And And we do a lot of really interesting work. I think some of the things that I like most is when a partner comes to us and wants to offer something to what we're building, and we can offer something back. And I think that's what happened when we entered into a partnership a couple of years ago, almost now, with Zero. Zero had seen our strategy online, knew that they were going to be able to help contribute to ours, and we were also able to help contribute to them as they were building their women's football strategy. And I think the most obvious way of showing what we've done together is pooling what we both can do best to support others as well. So one of the really cool things that we've done is develop a whole set of toolkits on how to run a football club, how to get sponsorship, how to set up a football club from scratch, because we know there are so many women's football teams out there, lots of women that have started to play, but they don't know how to set up a team or set up a club or do some of the basics. And we've developed those toolkits, and also around things like equality and running a match day and online software tools. We've basically put together this package of information so that anyone that wants to set up a team has something, a compendium of information that is going to help them. And we think that's good for the game as a whole, the whole football ecosystem. And we're thrilled that someone like Zero wanted to help us achieve that, because it was one of the things strategically we thought was important as well.
Amazing. And how would you say that the Lionesses have had a positive impact on the growth of women's football as a whole, particularly on grassroots level clubs such as yourself?
Yeah, so I think the Lionesses' success in the Euros last summer in 2022 was really groundbreaking. There was a bit of a step change for football in England. I think that obviously it was important that they were successful, but I think the other element in that was that England was hosting the tournament, and that meant that people were able to go and see these incredible football stars on the doorstep. And I think that shows the power of hosting events if you can connect with people. What we saw right after that was attendances in the Women's Super League in England. I think they doubled it. Well, they increased by 200%. And people started seeing it on television. It kind of elevated and grew. For us, that translated into an 84% increase on the women's side of the club. And I think I think that it's legitimized the space. It's increased the visibility. The one challenge, I guess, is in doing that, it's really important that new fans or people that are curious about women's football don't automatically Google the men's Premier League that's closest to them to go and watch those women, because women's football is completely different to men's football. And, we're in the second tier, but our men's side is in the seventh tier. So people that might be looking for good quality women's football might not realize just how close they are to it if they only look at men's football. So I'm hoping also that as we go forward, we step out of our default men's football thinking and are able to look at it and uncover some real gems in the women's football space that people might not know about.
Before we jump off the call, going into 2024, what are your predictions and insights for the women's game?
Well, we are going to see growth. We're going to see increased growth, especially around attendances. I think that in the past, we've judged attendances by the one-off spikes. And I think that what we're actually going to see is the average attendance is increasing, and that's a healthier indicator than just, the one-off records. I think that's really important. I think we're now going to start to see external investment coming into the game. Even just last week, we saw London City Lionesses, an independent women's team in the second tier, receive new investment. And I think that will continue, but might be harder in some of the bigger men's-dominated clubs. So there could be a space for the smaller clubs, the independent clubs, women's only clubs to thrive. But at the same time, they're constantly under threat as well, because men's football has cracked on to the fact that women's football is the future. And the more money that they put in, it also means that it becomes harder and harder for women's teams to catch up. Or to keep up, not catch up, because they're already at the top of the game. So there's going to be some challenges, but in the end, that growth is there. And it's just a question of whether women's teams will be able to have their unique, authentic individual brand, and whether they're able to elevate that rather than just lean into the men's side and look a little bit like a shadow version of the men's team that maybe they come under. So I'm hoping for a lot more autonomy and interesting brand.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for joining today on Soccer X TV.
Thank you very much for having me.